Hello, hello. Jenny Bowling here with Pivot to Prosperity, brought to you by Pivotal Real Estate Investments, where we help our investors build wealth and income through commercial real estate that also improves communities. Today, we have Ken Wilshire here as our guest. Thank you for coming on, Ken.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Let me do a little bit of your bio and then I'll let you fill in more.
Yeah, of course.
Um, Ken has about 30 years of service operations and customer service, business management, and development experience in the business world, and more particularly in the environmental, would you say, natural environmental world?
Yes, a good portion of my life has been spent in that. About 10 years being in a management of a wildlife management area and working cattle ranch, and then now more recently in a more commercial landscape setting. So
Yeah, that's terrific. And the environmental sciences is really probably the better way to put that, and anthropology, which is also a very unique background, I would say.
yes,
Um, so yes, and you are working with a company called Rotolo Consultants, right?
that's correct. Yeah, I've been working with them for a few months now, and I love being with the team, and be happy to tell a little bit more about them as things go through here. But
Yeah,
yeah,
do
it's
that
a
now.
couple.
Let's do that
Okay,
now.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, the company is 45 years strong, based out of Slidell, Louisiana. We actually operate out of 21 cities currently, and one of the newer additions to their portfolio is the Central Florida area, and that's the reason how I got involved. We do commercial construction and commercial landscaping, and I'm on the landscaping side. And for my piece, I act as a business consultant, looking for projects and ways to help commercial properties improve their landscaping, and kind of rely on this 45 years of experience and the depth of our corporate office and our guys on the ground and gals on the ground to make those promises and those kind of commitments come to life. We started in Central Florida with a construction side. We actually are wrapping up at Universal's Epic Universe Park, doing all of their hardscape, softscape installations. That team will be finishing up pretty soon and heading on to other projects, but it's given us an opportunity to expand into kind of what we're good at in the commercial maintenance side. We started working with Orange County Public Schools, with the Toho Water Management District. We brought on some other partners and are just looking to expand that. The company is really strong and growing, and this is the third generation that's taken helm in this family business and wanting to keep the Rotolo Consultants Incorporated name alive, and continue to push out and do great things in the landscape and construction world.
So when you say construction too, is that all kinds of construction or is it certain aspects?
There's certain aspects of it, but we are, licensed in areas to be able to do as a full, general contractor. More
Okay.
often, most of our projects tie back into landscaping in some component. Generally, we try to stay outside of the building. And so anything inside we leave to other contractors to handle, but anything exterior to that, lighting, aquatics, pools, fountains, any of those kinds of hardscape elements, tree houses. We've done all kinds of unique projects across over the years, and continue to look at unique projects moving forward. Epic Universe is one, at least in the backyard here, that I think once it's done, we'll be very proud of. So
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Can you explain
I'm
more
excited
about
to see it. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't got any previews yet. So
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Explain more about what hardscape is, would you?
So yeah, speaking of those things like fountains and water features, other components that kind of build into the like rock facades, things that are like hard elements that tend to have landscaping inside of them. So as you go into other, like just imagine a theme park. As you're going through those various areas and you see these unique formations that have trees and other plantings around them, that tends to be the kind of work that we do in that setting. So adding in whether it may be facades, rock facades, or even hard concrete facades, but then splash pads, pools, other kind of components fall into that hardscape element for us. Pavers, fire pits, those kinds of things.
Oh, okay. So I was originally thinking, I got it. It's a material, a hard material where you add some life to it by putting a plant or something that lives, but that's not really it, is it?
Not necessarily. Well, they kind of go side by side,
I'm
right?
trying to figure out where the hard part comes from.
Yes. So the hard part, Tim, you were on the right path with harder materials, typically concretes, rocks, those kinds of things, which become part of the overall landscape. And then those softer elements come in to balance them. So the grasses, the other native plants that may be introduced, even pops of color, become things that become part of that overall landscape appeal, but are not just plantings. So the two work hand in hand, especially in those larger commercial settings like that. Whether it's like you imagine a university or a hospital as you're walking down those corridors, they have elements that are hard fixtures, but there's softer elements around them. That's the balance between the two. So hopefully that
So yeah, so I'm
follows a
thinking that it's kind of like, and this we were just were I was interviewing somebody that is into zoning and whatnot, but it's
okay.
Orange County is doing all this placemaking, and there's a Lake Nona is known for placemaking.
Sure.
It's like the statement pieces
Yes.
that make a place unique. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, most definitely. And it creates I mean it's designed to not only help with, based on what it is, whatever the project is. It's not only designed to help pedestrian flow, but also to add that aesthetic and that wow factor in a lot of settings. A great example of a hardscape would be the Washington Mall. So you have this, really like dramatic element that's in place that has a tremendous amount of like hard edges around it. There's concrete, there's a bottom structure, but there's also water, there's also plantings and grass. And so you combine those two hard and soft elements to create this kind of cohesive landscape that is, in that particular case, able to be enjoyed by millions of people on a regular basis. Lots of foot traffic, and designed to be able to take on that kind of pedestrian wear and tear, but also add that aesthetic value that those projects are looking for. So
Interesting, very interesting. So hardscapes. Now you also mentioned a couple other kinds of scapes, right?
yeah, so I mean, what I focus on primarily is the maintenance of landscape. So communities that already have existing landscape, that's where I come in to help assist and maintaining it. Help also consult on enhancing it. In a lot of cases, there's an opportunity to improve what's there. Maybe it's older landscape. Maybe previously it wasn't maintained in the most appropriate fashion. And maybe there's opportunities or changes in the direction that the project or the property wants to go. And so there's ways to improve it and then put in place those maintenance and management components so that the pretty things stay pretty and that investment stays protected, right? Because it does cost money to make those improvements. It does cost money to maintain it, but it's essential. It's essential to be able to do that for those commercial properties that are in the Central Florida area and across the globe. So
Well,
It's
but
a
in Central Florida, it's especially important to have that water, right?
Exactly, and also to look at components that ways to best manage the water use. It's we definitely want to make sure that everything is green and flourishing and looks beautiful, but there are really appropriate ways to make sure that that's done responsibly and to do it in a way that's conservation driven, but matches the best with the landscape that's in place.
So to that end, if you were, say, building a new commercial retail center, let's say
Mhm.
shopping center. I don't know why I'm going to that because I don't buy those too typically. Let's say a medical office building.
Okay.
So you want it to look good and whatnot. What would you recommend to the owners and when would you get involved?
Well, really, from a new construction standpoint, that process starts many, many months before ground even breaks. So generally, the architects are already involved, whether they've um, utilized, our services to as a consultant to help design and pair with the other building components or not. Generally, there are plans that are in place that, from that point, lay out exactly how the landscape's going to look, what products are going to be incorporated, and then everything's placed out to account for the irrigation that's needed, the amount of irrigation, the um, and sometimes that design is left up to whoever may be installing the plants. And more, we see a lot of that. It's a designer or builder design that goes into play. Once they're on the ground, they make the final determinations as to what makes the most sense. But generally, you're working with existing plans or kind of consulting with the architect to make sure that the plans are cohesive so that the building structure stylistically matches the landscape and vice versa. You want things to be welcoming and looking at areas that where pedestrians are going to cross, ensuring that you don't have obstructions or things that may become issues down the road. So you have to look a little forward in that design component and how it's going to be maintained. And so in a lot of ways, we like to, from the RCI standpoint, we like to look at the project from the very moment we get involved and what's that going to look like to the client, the end client, the end user, at 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road. And we base that idealism on making sure that we're getting cost effectiveness in the irrigation that's being put in, that the plants that are going to hold up for that amount of time. If there's any obstacles, we're addressing those on the very front end, which makes it much easier down the road to continue to maintain. And you already have kind of an idea of what it's going to take on a financial side uh, to put this in. So it's not just the installation price that we look at. Like there is an installation price, but what's the total package going to cost for the next 10 to 15, 20 years? And if we can be involved, then it gives us a great opportunity to help find those cost saving measures and push those forward for the client. And keeping in mind too that there are people, especially in the hospital environment, you want to make sure that you're not putting in plants that are going to be continually dropping leaves and walkways that may get wet and creating trip hazards. You want to avoid all of those kind of liability issues as much as possible. And a lot of that could be done at the very beginning of the process.
Right, that makes sense. Do you have to worry about allergies too? Are there certain plants that people have more allergies to that?
Well, I don't know how much that factors in really. I mean, there's so many
Gotcha.
variables there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Living in Florida, whether it's on that project or it's the project next door, you're going to get the oak pollen, you're going to get the pine pollen. It's kind of hard to avoid. And especially hurricane season, you're getting winds from other places, so lots of different spores and things that get transported. So it's probably not really a factor that gets played in that often. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's certain plants you probably wouldn't want to put in certain areas because of their, maybe the odors that they produce or other things that may be maybe not aesthetically pleasing to the viewer or the consumer that may be participating in that project. So
Okay. So going back to the medical building, so do you
yeah.
design the irrigation systems and help with everything from soup to nuts on a new construction?
Most definitely. We have teams that specialize in that. Actually, our irrigation department is a very impressive machine, I will say, led by a really impressive resume of staff. And actually, the beauty of our folks is that no one gets to touch anything irrigation related unless they've gone through training. They can look at it, they can report it, they can assist somebody who has training, but we're adamant that every person that is part of that design, installation, and/or maintenance part of the irrigation process is fully trained, fully certified, and we have an internal certification program that we follow and promote. And I love it. I've worked with a number of companies, and irrigation is one of those areas where things can fall off, especially not having the right people, or just people change, move to other companies, and you lose that valuable resource and the information that they had. We try our best to make sure that we have the right people, and we're investing in them so that they stay on board and they are always there as that resource, and that they are very much a part of that beginning process all the way through to designing, installing, and then maintaining, which the maintenance side of it is really the most important part because that lasts the longest, right? And you want to get the most value out of that system that you spent the money up front to put in. So, and it's critical in operations to make sure that it's functioning properly, to do what it's doing, so that you preserve the rest of the investment that you put in. So,
And that's all huge what you just said, because for instance, I've been on on boards of several projects where we are
mhm,
constantly having irrigation problems and maintenance problems, and the grass maintenance is what suffers that we see, and then we realize
sure.
it's, but constantly there's somebody that's messing with the irrigation system that didn't know what they were doing. And
It
I
happens way
totally
too often.
appreciate what you're saying. Yes, especially, and it's really bad when they repipe something that totally cuts off a part of the property.
I could probably fill a full Instagram account full of mistakes and things that were done inappropriately with with irrigation, and that's just in this area. Who knows about the rest of the world? So
So tell me, when you have a property you've gone under contract with, do you keep maintenance logs on that property?
we definitely do. And actually, part of our guarantee to our customer is that every service that is completed on their property, whether it be the mowing and the detailing work, irrigation, any additional work orders, all of that gets reported at the time of service. So as we're concluding service, if it's mowing and edging and blowing, a report's generated. We verify that all the work that's supposed to be done for that day has been done, and that's sent off and it's logged internally in our system, and it's also available and loggable for the client, the end user. Same with our detailing services, same with irrigation. And again, any additional work orders or enhancement services that are being provided, and we try to document with pictures to make sure that we're accountable. We remain accountable, and we want our customer to know that we were there, we did what we say we were going to do, and here's a log of things. And so if something does go wrong, or if there's some issue that does happen, it helps us identify whether it was our responsibility, or something else, an external factor got into play and created an issue that we weren't alerted of, or something that's now something that needs to be addressed. A neighborhood kid kicks over a sprinkler head, and water shooting up and flooding out somebody's porch for 3 days. Our last time on the property was 5 days ago. well, once we're alerted of it, we can address it. But there are those factors, and if we could just assure that um, that was tested and approved and inspected at the time that we were there, then it helps everybody just to be accountable and to let whoever the end user is know that we are providing the service that we said we are going to. That under our contract, this is what we said we're going to do, and here's the proof, and here's our log to show that it's being done appropriately. So.
Does that mean that you test the sprinklers after every mow?
No, actually, those are done on a monthly basis.
Right.
So a full system check is done on a monthly basis. It may timing wise may coincide with the maintenance crew being out there, but generally, and depending on how large a community is or a property is, it may take multiple days for that technician to go through and actively test the system, and then go back and address any repairs that need to be corrected. Now, obviously, anything that's a major emergency is corrected right away, obviously with approval based on the contract and who's involved. It's definitely want to conserve water and address those issues before they become bigger problems. But generally, monthly inspections, reports generated after the time of the final inspections done or end of day for that particular inspector. And then any of those repairs that are needed are pushed over to the appropriate folks to make decisions on anything typically above and beyond what may be agreed upon as kind of a initial threshold for repair dollars. So.
Okay. And so we're going to go back to my medical office example.
Okay, there we go.
You have a new sod situation. You
Mhm.
let it grow for a while. I know that, but your first few cuts, is there something you want to say about those?
Would you want to get me in trouble? Well, the first few cuts, obviously, after the initial, it depends on who gets involved first, because oftentimes there are times when the installer of the landscape may not be the ultimate maintenance contract winner long term. So there is definitely a hold period. You want to make sure that the turf is well established and that it's healthy and thriving, that there's no issues. I also want to check and make sure that there's no encroachment of pests that may be spread into other areas. And so once you know that it's established and based on what the criteria of that particular property may be as to maintain height, then that gets, then you can start your maintenance process and you can start maintaining the turf and beginning to fertilize and do pest control in a managed fashion. Generally, that does not happen with whoever does the installation. It's usually a company that is going to stay on board for the long-term maintenance that is focused more on making sure that it's done correctly. Often the team that puts it in, and I'm not saying about our team, but there are teams I've seen and fall behind and taking contracts from because the installer just put the plants down, put the grass down. They should have been there for a year, and 3 months in, everything looks awful. Irrigation's not done properly. They're not fertilizing, and all of the initial investment is starting to suffer until they could get somebody who's more equipped to actually manage the turf and the rest of the landscape appropriately. You see it a lot. But we like to encourage the opportunity to go from installer to maintainer, so that we can be a part of the process from beginning to end. And it makes a difference. It really does. If you see projects that have that hand holding and can transition from builder, installer to maintainer and continuing that process, it's night and day comparative to the reverse. So.
Yeah, and being a former flipper, I can really vouch for you want people to put in the sod the right way
Yes,
because
always the right way.
yeah, I have personally put some in where I had left gaps and I've gone back and tried to fix that, which is a nightmare. And
Yes.
if you don't have it properly rolled and whatnot to really make it nice, it's not going to be nice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's you have to put the work in up front to make sure that the conditions are acceptable and perfect for laying the sod to begin with, and then it has to be installed by seasoned professionals who know what they're doing, and then it has to be um, maintained and treated with respect. And that's unfortunately not always how it works out. So.
Yeah, I never thought about grass being a tripping hazard.
But it definitely can be. You get a gap between those risers of St. Augustine, and you can fall flat on your face, right?
Yeah, I didn't do that, but yeah.
But it can happen, and that's something
Oh,
to be
yeah.
mindful of in projects that do have pedestrian access and areas that maybe should be, a crosswalk area instead of a turfed area. But once the turf is there, then the opportunity for trip and falls can happen if it's not installed correctly. So
Right, right.
why
That's a
it's
big
important
deal.
it's why it's important to choose the right professional to get that kind of work completed.
Yeah, yeah. So, taking it into the maintenance a little bit more, share with
Sure.
us what people, at least in Central Florida, need to be thinking of when they putting together, say, a request for proposal. What should they be
Most
thinking?
definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think, in my experience at this point, anybody who's looking to bring on a new maintenance company, obviously you want to look at, their company history. You want to look at the depth of experience that they have. I think it's very critical to look beyond kind of the surface and the fluffiness of maybe their package proposal. A pretty proposal is nice, but you need to look a little deeper. Definitely recommend reaching out to any references that they provide to make sure that what they say is a good partnership really is a good partnership. Um, and asking maybe the hard questions that the board may have already been asking. How did this company deal with the things that we've been dealing with? And maybe from an investor side, what are things that this company has been doing well? Have they not been doing with this particular property that we should be mindful of? I think looking too at the the kinds of employee benefits that are being offered. The way a company treats their employees reflects tremendously in the work that they perform. So a company that respects and promotes within and really supports their team is a company that I would personally want to be involved in my project. And I think a company like RCI definitely comes to the table with that offering. There are a tremendous amount of landscape companies in Central Florida, tons of competition. And just because it's a big name doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right name. But doing your homework, and really looking at, you know, people's past experiences speak volumes. So I definitely rely heavily on the reference side. I definitely rely heavily on the experience side. Looking at the capability the company has to be able to grow. If they say they can take on a project that is larger than what they're currently operating at, then they need to be able to prove that they financially can do that, that they're financially sound, and they have the ability to scale. And a company who can prove that, from an equipment and personnel standpoint, they're ready to take on any new project. The worst thing that can happen is they meet all of those top boxes, you sign the contract, and day one, the crew doesn't show up because there weren't enough people to move over and start the new job. There wasn't enough equipment to move or do start on the first part of the new job. And it happens all the time. Larger companies are able to make that happen a little easier. Smaller companies are a little more challenging. But I think having that conversation with the vendor of choice to ensure that they really can scale to your project is incredibly important. Because the last thing you want to do is go through all of that process and realize that you picked the wrong candidate.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, it's so frustrating.
Very frustrating. You got to go back to square one and get everybody involved again. And it's just it's more of a nightmare than it needs to be. And we see it a lot. Actually, we recently took over a project of a similar fashion. A company was awarded a project and tried it for a month and just realized that they couldn't do it. And so we were able to pick up what their awarded piece was, and it does happen. It's unfortunate. That was probably a big win for them, for a smaller company, and they just weren't able to make it happen. And it's a difficult experience for everybody, and it makes it challenging. But so I think definitely doing your homework, looking past. It is always nice to see a really well put together package. Looking at those small details does account for things. And it's the same as the landscape. So if everything looks pretty on the outside, you have less questions about what's on the inside, right? So if you're looking at a house and everything looks great on the outside, you may overlook a few things that may be a question mark on the inside. But that's kind of how that fluffiness goes. But if you look beyond that and ask a few of those questions directly, and I think ask the hard questions, put people on the spot. Can you really do this? Prove it to us. And I've stood before a bunch of boards and property owners and had to plead my case. And I wouldn't go to bat if I didn't stand up for the company I was with at the time. And I definitely know that I can stand strong with RCI. So.
Well, that's great to hear. And when you say vet the company as far as its financial capabilities, how do you suggest doing that?
Well, there's a number of ways, and I know there are some sensitivities there. Not everybody's willing to contribute that, but I think there are ways that individual businesses can, they can show balance sheets, they can show things that don't show everything, to show that they are. And if you are if they've already been used to working with municipalities and other larger scale projects, they're used to providing that kind of information upon request. I'm not saying everybody has to go under that, but if it comes to tight scrutiny, I think it may be worth pursuing that direction. An assessment of staffing, staff experience, equipment like a resource depth, I think are also really great places to validate and verify that the company is strong. If they are willing to if one company is only looking to put one or two experienced employees on overseeing a particular project, where another company may be applying more folks and more eyes and more checkpoints, that might be a way to validate the experience level and the depth of professional experience level that each company has.
So yeah, there's a ton there that you're you're pointing out that's really important. If I'm looking, for instance, collecting proposals on companies, I hadn't really thought about adding that financial capability to it, but the depth, certainly the extent of equipment and whatnot. But one of the key things that I feel is critical too, is turnover among maintenance staff. And so when
Yes.
you've got a company like yours that takes care of its people, you're going to be way better off. You're not going to have newbies all the time on the property that don't know what they're doing.
Most definitely. And I think RCI, and I won't speak for other companies that I haven't worked with, but I know in my experience so far with RCI, and looking at the track record, the comparative turnover rate in our maintenance staff is so much lower based on the importance that they play into the end use of what we're doing, and the investment of time and energy that the company puts into those individuals creates an environment where they want to show up to work. They're rewarded for their hard effort. We know it's a hard job, and because of that, we want to reward them for those efforts, but also continue to give them an opportunity to grow and move beyond that, where they can become next level supervisors. They can move on. There's enhancement and other improvement opportunities for their career within our company that may or may not exist in other companies. And I think just having that and promoting it and pushing it does allow us to retain our team, and to make sure that they know that they are a critical part of what we do, and we want them to be there. And so, it shows. They show up. We're confident when we take on a new project that we've got a team that's going to be there Monday morning to start. They're going to have the equipment ready. They're going to be ready, and we're going to be ready to get things going. And that's important, especially for somebody like me and my job. I'm making a lot of promises while I'm out talking to people, and said our company can do this. And when we get to Monday morning and we're starting, I want to make sure that I'm right and I believed in the right things. And so, there's all of us work together to make sure that the system and the machine works correctly, right? We all have a stake in it, from the owners to the guy that's swinging the blower around, and the young lady who's operating the weed eater. Everybody is part of our success, and I think it shows.
So explain a little more specifically how you get engaged, at what point and what your responsibilities are, and how far you
Sure.
go into it.
Yeah. Well, as a business consultant, my job really starts from before the beginning. So, I'm looking from our company standpoint. I'm looking for opportunities where we can get involved. I'm looking for potential projects and customers we can work with, potential partners, and really, I look for strategic partners. My goal is to look for individuals who I can really build a relationship with. Somebody who I can find out what their needs are, whether it's the first project that they're willing to talk about, or the 50th project down the road. That's really the end game for me, is to look at, as everybody's growing, we all grow together. If you have multiple projects, I'd love to get involved with most of them, but let's start with one. And let's work together. Let's build that relationship. Let me show you that what I'm talking about really does work, and that we know what we're doing. I have a depth of resources at my disposal to be able to carry forth what I promised. And so, I get involved with getting to a point where I get an RFP in my hand. I go through the full review of the RFP with my team, the local team. I have them put their eyes on the project. I put my eyes on the project. Usually, I physically walk the project, no matter what the size is, how many days it may take me. And then from that point, I push things into our estimating and contracting team. They get everything together, give it back to me. We have a team meeting, and then from that point, I take it to the client. And should things move forward, then I stay on board from that point until we're no longer working with that client.
Oh, that's
That
great. Yeah.
may be 5 years, it may be 25 years. And knock on wood, I hope it's 25 years. Or maybe not 25. I don't know. I may want to retire at some point, but so, but it's really, once I make the establishment of a partnership, and I want to stay with it. So, I don't go out and seek 50 or 100 partners. I want a small group of partners that, have the kind of properties and projects that I think we as a company, as RCI and our team, marry well with. We have a good relationship, and we can provide the service they're looking for, and really trying to find that niche, and to work that niche to gain more business over time. So as that, if it was a multifamily operator, who we started with one project, they may have multiples, and they may choose to buy more. I want them to know, when they're starting to think about buying more or acquiring more, that we're going to be the company, and Ken's going to be the person who's walking the ground with them, talking about what they should and shouldn't do, what they should and shouldn't consider, how we can help this property, get it back where it needs to be, or whatever elements need to be addressed. I want to be that person who's there walking with them and carrying the business forward.
And you've been around in this arena a long time, it would seem. And I got to bring up the cattle farm. I don't know, were you ever able to do some landscaping on the cattle farm too?
Well, we did have landscaping, yes. We also had an ecotourism operation. So we had a large visitor center. All of the vegetation and the landscaping that was there around that visitor complex was all native plants. It was planted in kind of more of a natural scape design. So there were a few I would say like hard shrub edges in places that seemed appropriate to kind of segment pedestrian and non-pedestrian areas, or to be a buffer. But most of the other vegetative areas were native grasses, wildflowers, and we maintained them in a very similar fashion to the way we maintain the 3,500 acre wildlife preserve, which we went through seasonal summer burns, prescribed burning to maintain those, and so no use of pesticides, no use of fertilizers in those areas. But yeah, it was a little different environment. But still well maintained. We wanted the Disney appeal, but without as many chemicals and without as much of a hard line on. We want it to be more of a natural environment setting, but safe and presentable, aesthetically pleasing for the consumer.
Yeah, so you've really dealt with all extremes, it seems like. So that's pretty cool.
It's been an interesting ride so far. So
Yeah, yeah. So do you end up doing xeriscape very much? What I
we do.
consider xeriscape anyway, I assume
Yeah,
you
no,
really.
that's definitely, and it's becoming more and more popular. Obviously, water conservation is a huge factor to consider, and I think it's very appropriate in a number of locations and a number of settings where maybe shading prevents certain plants from being able to grow, or maybe consumer just wants to make zero maintenance element happen for their property, and it's definitely acceptable. And it's there's definitely a number of projects that we've worked on that include that, and we continue to look at projects that want to include that. So
Probably. All right, we're
yeah,
gonna have to start wrapping it up. I've got to ask you the
sure,
big question here.
okay.
Is there a pivotal person or event that either brought you to where you are today or that's pushing you forward to some particular goal?
Yeah, I think I've thought about this a little bit, and I'm going to shout out to actually a previous boss of mine. His name is Sean King. He likes to call himself a serial entrepreneur, and he took me under his wing when I worked as this business developer with Florida Leak Locators. And I don't want to pitch that company; I'm not associated anymore, but that's where we got our start. And Sean and I continue to be friends to this day. We were business partners at one point in life. Actually, worked on a patent together and had a business together. But he definitely took an interest in me, my family, and his, even through kind of ups and downs with other opportunities that I've looked at, he's been kind of part of that. He's been a great resource for me to reach out and ask his opinion on things, and he's been a mentor, and he's continued to involve me in projects that I've done on the side, marketing related and kind of public relations related, and I appreciate that he kind of gives a nod to that part of my creativity. So yeah, he's a great guy, and I think he definitely made a big difference in my life. So
All right. You want to nominate him as a pivotal person?
yeah, I don't know if he'll like help, want that award or not, but yeah, I'd be happy to.
All right. Well, why don't you let him know that you nominated him and
I will.
ask if he would like to come on the show? And
Yeah,
that's what I like to do, is to recognize people that are pivotal.
yeah, I think he would probably. I don't want to speak for him, but I think at least he'd like the nod. So yeah.
Great. Well, so good. All right. So why don't you tell people how they can reach you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm easy to reach. Probably the easiest way is by my cell phone, which I have on me all the time. The number is 321-480-9345. Or you can go to email me. It's K Wilshire, and that's WILSHIRE at RotoloConsultants.com. And RotoloConsultants.com is also our website. So www.ROTOLO consultants, CONSULTANTS.com. Yes. Yeah. Spelling it out. It's like, I don't do that very often, but
I
yes.
know, yeah.
Consultants.com, K Wilshire, RotoloConsultants.com, or 321-480-9345. Again, I'm Ken Wilshire, business consultant with RCI. And I definitely, Jenny, appreciate you bringing me on board today and give me a chance I feel like I took up all the time. I thought it was gonna, but I appreciate having that opportunity. So thank you.
That's great. And actually, there's a couple of things I want to add here, just to stick
Sure.
on the end, because they're remarkable. And that you were managing a 4,700 acre cattle ranch that was that big. That's
Yes.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was about 1,500 acres of that was the cattle part of it. So we had cattle that are historic to Florida. So the cracker cattle and cracker horses were part of the rotation and grazing program. We also had some French bred Charolais cattle, which were brought over by the owners. He was a 10th generation cattleman. And so his family actually brought them over from France down through their trek from Canada down to Louisiana. So ironic that I work for another company that's based out of Louisiana. So yeah, it was a fun time. I spent about 10 years doing that and learn all kinds of things from palpating to prescribed burning and sometimes doing those things in the same day. So
What's palpating? What?
So it's a process of determining whether cows are pregnant or not. And there's actual process to doing that. You have to go through a class and learn to be able to do it. I don't do it anymore. I don't just go roadside and start checking, see if a cow is pregnant or not. But
Gotcha.
It's an interesting experience in life for sure.
Okay. Well, and also you almost made it on Shark Tank. You
Almost.
had
Yeah,
2 patents, and you have a son that's
I do, yeah. A 10-year-old son, Hudson, who's man, he won't stop growing, and he's a great dude. I think I look up to him more than he looks up to me sometimes, but not because he's taller, but no, he's gonna do great things, I know.
Well, that's terrific. Okay. Well, thank you again. And
Yes,
we
most definitely.
will
Thanks for having me.
make sure those show notes give all your information as well. So thank you again. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds great. Take care.